The clang of steel, the thunder of hooves, and the weight of an oath press against your chest. Yet beneath the armour, another truth stirs a question of survival, pride, and what it means to turn away from a field meant to define you. Today, we step inside the mind of a knight not remembered for banners or victory, but for the quiet, dangerous act of leaving. Now take a breath, lower the visor, and step into the field where the story begins. Visor rim bites your brow as the first line buckles. Through the slit, the world narrows to tilting shields and a churn of hooves that shakes your knees. Metal breath grows hot and short. Gilded threads at your crest itch where sweat gathers. A banner tilts, then vanishes in a fold of bodies, and the sound that follows is not a roar but a sucked-in hush, like the field itself forgets to exhale. Your hands find the hinge, flick it up a finger's breadth, and cool air threads in. The tilt of the slope is worse than it looked from the rear. Horses slide, and the ground feels greased by trampled grapes and loose dust from the dry rows. A fallen lance lies across your path. You nudge it with your boot and watch it vanish under oppressive hooves as if swallowed. Slope clay smears to a shine where wheels and sabatons have cut it. Far off to the right, a line of pavises looks neat and harmless, like painted doors set in a field. It is the last neat thing you see. The men ahead lean into their reins and pull left, then right, then nowhere at all. You weigh options like stones in a pocket you should have emptied before riding out. The oath you gave has a taste, iron and old wine on the tongue. Survival has a smell, sharp like tallow smoke and horse. Pride sits heavier than the shield on your arm, and it squeaks where leather thongs bite wet wood. A rider sideways to you shouts a name and is gone under a knot of plunging rumps. You do not see him again, and the simple fact hangs naked, sometimes not seen as mercy. A patch of bare ground opens to your left near a tumbling cart. You lean that way, almost idly, like a man letting a breeze turn him. Your mount takes the change without judgment. In companies like this, provost riders watch more closely than enemies. They look for drift, for gaps that widen, for a man who prefers the side of a wagon to the face of a foe. Their eyes not angry, they're clerk's eyes that can tally. When ranks scatter, entries thin across the muster roll, the page forgives nothing and remembers more than any witness. You drop the shield edge to your thigh and let its painted badge turn mud brown. The gilt on your spurs flashes where you do not want it to flash. A quick scrape against a wheel spoke dulls one, and the sound it makes is too small for the storm around you. A frayed ribbon from a friend's favour licks your wrist. You tuck it under the van brace so it cannot wave and tell on you. Somewhere ahead, a horn cuts again, but the call is a muddled one, half rally, half alarm, which is to say it is only a sound. The press pushes you toward the strip of broken vineyard, and the safe geometry of rows, staves, once trellises, lie stabbed into the silt at bad angles. You step your horse sideways between them, knees talking to flanks, head down like a penitent. The motion looks like seeking shade. It also looks like leaving. A cart goes over near the crown of the slope. Barrels roll at lazy angles, then find speed. One thumps a fallen man and keeps rolling. Another splits, and Hotma spills down like a red thought. Your horse snorts at the sweet tang and tries to bite at the foam before remembering fear again. Under your palm, the pommel is slick. Pride is a poor grip. You ease the sword an inch in the scabbard and let the leather sit quiet against your cuisses. A narrow path of churned dirt opens against the rim of a wagon, and you take it with a show of purpose, as if fetching orders. Men make space for orders. At the edge of the row, a boy with a water skin freezes, not sure whether to lift it to you. He looks at your crest, then at your face, then at your reins. You see him calculate as if the sum might matter to him later. He does not raise the skin. You nod as if that is the right answer for both of you. Armourers quietly claim that a stitched badge pulls heat into the cloth when a standard falls. A pricking omen that stings the shoulder like nettle. Press the strap ring into your glove until it leaves a clean round mark on the palm. The small pain steadies, makes a private tally you can control. Downslope. A knot of men on foot forms and breaks. You see no clear enemy, only a pressure that makes shapes where it passes. A horse without a rider bumps your knee and lingers as if asking for a new plan. You touch the rein to its neck and send it drifting with the others. A leaf on a stream you step out of because the current looks wrong. Third lines learn to read the field by wagons and by dust. A wagon that slides sideways means ground that will not hold. Dust that saffrons the air means men who run, their steps grinding the dry top to powder. Pages at the pay tables consider both. They mark names in the safe order of columns while the world insists on crooked lines. Your jaw aches where the chin strap climbed up and cut at the hinge of your mouth. You loosen it the smallest degree and feel greed for air. The bite on the brow returns where the visor rises down again. You let it. Narrowed sight serves you now. Broad views are for banners and prayers. The first change, the true one, is small and nothing like the ones in ballads. You let your horse's head come a finger closer to the left wheel of a supply wagon and hold it there through 3 breaths. A fat man at the tailboard shouts to someone behind the tilt, and you nod as if answering. The nod costs you nothing and buys you a step. A spear butt raps your greave with intent, then raps again, lighter, as the man who gave it sees your mount's colour and your cloak's trim and decides to rap elsewhere. Favour lives in tiny decisions no poem remembers. A chain over the wagon gate slaps wood in a dull rhythm, and the beat teaches your horse to keep time. You think of the oath again and find it now like a script copied on bad parchment, letters thin in the strokes you loved when you were young. Then you think of a mill your father owned and of a barn that smells of straw and of leather cured by smoke. The field shrinks further to a narrow sense 1 more yard, then another, then 1 more yard after that. Mud splashes up and freckles the cloth over your thigh. You rub at it and then stop, because muddying the badge is better than polishing it. A feather from your plume breaks loose and flips once, caught on a gust no one else feels, and sticks to your gorget. There is humour in that, quiet and mean. Even a bird wishes to desert. A man ahead sheds a broken spear and picks up a barrel stave as if that changes him from a soldier to a porter. It does not. Not yet. The stave knocks your boot and jars a nail half loose. The small ache helps. Pain is a simple map you can follow with your breath. Beyond the wagons, the ridge goes pale where the dust thins, and the road that runs behind it shows a strip of clean ruts like an invitation. You do not take it yet. Standing still in this place would be a speech. You prefer sentences made of steps that no one marks down. Beyond the ridge, a trumpet snaps bright and thin, and men turn their heads. You let your horse breathe while the call rings once more. Riverbank mud sucks at hooves while the trumpet's thin note skims the ridge behind. The mud holds, then lets go with a wet pop, leaving a splay of brown on your chaussees. Vine roots rake up from the cut rows like small ribs. Between the rows, grape skins mash to a purple glaze. Flies find the sweetness fast. A scrap of pennon snags a post and twitches like a small fish. Hands ease the rein until your horse's head drifts level with an ox cart's rim. Breath slips in short draughts under mail and cloth. The visor stays down for shape. It hides as much as it guards. Your knees say left. The mount obeys without fuss, stepping the precise pace of a man assigned to fetch water. A vine stake clacks under the shoe and shoots ahead. A split wheel juts at an angle where a cart tipped and spat out bundles. One bundle shows a torn corner of cloth of gold. The corner gleams, then mud blots it to dull. A wine cask rolls in a slow circle, never quite settling. It bumps a dead branch and stops, as if listening for a better reason to move. Better to look busy than bold, better still to look burdened. The thought arrives dressed as common sense, so you let it in. You keep your shield low enough that its rim prints your thigh, but high enough to mislead eyes that take quick inventory. Provost riders count, and they remember small details a crest, a horse's blaze, the angle of a mount's ears when it hears a horn. They patrol the seams between lines, where excuses breed. Punishment is simple and public, so fear can be tallied and filed. Men in such offices admire straight ranks. They dislike creativity in the field more than they dislike enemy arrows. Toe, heel, and breath carry you along a hedge ditch where water shows in black strips. The bank slumps, giving a lever of clay your horse tests with care. The smell along this low stretch is all churned earth and the faint sourness of trampled grapes. Farther on, the river itself sends up a cooler scent that you imagine as safety, even while you know water makes witnesses of boatmen. A figure in a rough cap stares from the ditch, then sinks back with the stillness of a hare. He saw your plume a moment ago and sees only mud now. A drop runs from your nasal's edge to your lip, salted by old sweat. You taste iron and realize you bit your tongue cleanly without remembering when. Your left spur catches a thong on the cart and snags for half a heartbeat. The small check reads as patience to anyone watching. You turn it into a glance toward the ridge, as if you care about banners. Beyond the ridge, the dust hangs in veils. The sun makes those veils look harmless. You do not believe the sun. A stump rises under the wheel track, and your mount stumbles. You keep the seat with your thighs. The stumble does you a favour. A man who stumbles cannot be accused of intent. A rider near the cart wrong side sees the slip and flinches. His eyes flick to your badge, then to the mud on it, and he chooses to study the vine rows instead. A coil of rope lies in the ditch bed, soaked and dark, half buried. You steer across it and think of the stable smell of old hemp. The association is a soft one, almost kind. It draws up a picture of a barn eave where ropes hang in neat loops. The picture does not accuse you. It only reminds you that not all loops are gallows. A hollow opens among the cut vines where pickers burned trimmings days ago. Char flakes rest by the rim, dry and delicate. Your horse's breath scatters them. The field looks busy and broken in the same glance. A helmless man lurches across the lane and leans both hands on the cart, not really pushing. His eyes never leave the ridge. Ink and coin make a soldier honest and tense, and noise makes him brave on slopes. You have neither noise nor coin to spend right now. You spend posture. You let the shoulder with a better badge angle toward the ditch and let your cloak's edge cover what it can cover. A small snag tears a scrap from the cloak's hem. The tear helps, a dignity given up on purpose. The ditch deepens where a cattle path crosses. Water sits there, dark and patient. Dragonflies patrol it as if nothing larger ever bleeds in their world. Your horse's fetlock sinks, then shivers free. You pat the neck twice, the second pat for show. A boy with a feed bag watches and decides the pat was kindness. You accept his decision. It costs him nothing and buys you a witness who will remember kindness rather than direction. A battered sallet lies crown up in the furrow. No Ed inside it now. You tip it with your boot and let it rock and settle. The action feels superstitious, so you do it without flourish. A gauntlet, not yours, rests palm up a yard away with the shape of a hand still in it. You look away before the shape dissolves back to leather. A standard on the ridge lists and tries to stiffen against a gust. The cloth fails, and only the pole's stubbornness keeps it upright. Horns attempt phrases that never quite resolve. The messages sound like arguments in a room where no one wants to own the loudest voice. Your breath finds a pace that matches hoof and cart. The rhythm steadies a little shame. Brush scratches the greave and leaves a pale thread. It looks like white hair on an old man's chin. The picture makes you grin despite yourself. A brief, private joke the field is too busy to overhear. Your visor rim catches a trickle off the brow and runs it past the cheek before it can sting the eye. At a break in the rows, the river lies broad and bright below. Barges cling to the far bank like beetles. The near bank is a smear of brown with tracks cut in at angles, some sharp, some tentative, all unhelpful. Men who went straight make clear lines. Men who thought twice left commas you can read. A boatman on the near bank shouts upstream and points at a shallow. The sound does not reach you clear, only the gesture. He's already busy with others. His jacket shows tar marks that echo the marks on the cart's axles. He will remember faces that pay and forget shapes that pass behind wagons with their eyes down. On the bundle you passed earlier, a stitched beast still shows a proud jaw. You do not look back at it again. You thumb a strap ring at your saddle and feel a tiny nick under the leather where it bit the edge last week. The familiar floor calms more than the river does. Predictable pain is better than noble ideas. Clerks prefer to know where officers stand because lines on paper like straight entries. The habit of writing encourages men to imagine order persists under dust. Riders between orders make different sense to them. They note names that refuse tally and question who signs for rations. They might not chase truth down the lane, but they will remember the question until the table closes. Your throat dries. You swallow and find grit. Vine leaves turned up by hooves flicker their pale undersides. The colour has a tired cast, like skin after a long swim. The analogy is unkind to the leaves. You refuse to apologise to a plant. One more step carries you onto a stretch where the ditch rises and the track narrows against a stand of willow. Willow wands comb the side of your helm and whisper. The whisper is not friendly or unfriendly. It is a plant explaining its business. The sound masks the clink of a buckle you ease with a thumb. A plume feather breaks near its root and stays. A small funeral no one notices. A rider crowds near, eyes wide, horse lathered. He seeks permission in the tilt of your head and uses it without thanks. He edges past toward the river and vanishes into a dip. You give him the path because gifts look like authority if given calmly. You picture the map in your head again, but you keep it small. 10 lengths to the next cart, 5 to the break in the hedge, 3 to the stump with the white fungus like a handkerchief. Micro maps beat banners. They are quiet and obedient. A thread of darker smoke rises farther down slope. Not the grey cook haze, but something pitched and sharp. Tar warms in kettles when men ready wheels or cords, and the smell carries low along the vines. It rises the damp air and hooks the back of the mouth. You let the horse breathe it first and read his ear. He twitches, then steadies. You angle toward the lower track while pitch smoke catches at the back of your throat. Trumpet calls skate thin through pitch smoke, their edges curling where the lower track dips. The notes argue with each other, then fade against wagon sides and a slope that swallows sound. Breath settles under the helm in short, serviceable pulls. Your horse flicks a black thread of foam and steadies to the cart's lazy roll. Between axles, a corridor opens and closes, a shuddering glimpse of open ground. Wheels creak, and a tailboard bounces on a frayed thong. Men shout over inventory they do not finish. You drift with the movement until the smoke thins and the sky widens. Beyond the wagons, a ripple of shields holds like a low wall. The wall is not a fort and not a boast. It is a row of pavises set edge to edge, painted faces flaking where sun and rain have bitten them before today. A few men stand behind with quarrels and strings and a practical air. Their captain glances along the line and decides you a decoration that can be ignored. His good sense is your shelter. You give your mount the smallest knee and slide behind a hay wagon's wheel. The iron band shows new hammer marks, bright against tar streaks. Your shield rides lower, your badge reads as mud and luck. A trumpet tries a braver call and fails to convince itself. You pretend not to hear conviction fail. A clerk's habit persists in you, even if you never held a pen at a pay table. You count carts, then distances, then faces. A man without a visor means he came out of trouble alive or went into it careless. 2 of those pass, both breathing like men who have carried a message and wish never to carry another. You keep your head angle neutral so it looks like you're waiting to be told. Pockets of shouting bloom and go out behind the ridge. The river glints wide beyond the fields, a silver band that promises nothing. You fit the horse's shoulder to the wagon's back corner and hold there. The position reads as duty, the messenger waiting for a path to open. It also reads as not here if anyone is inclined to assign blame here. A cartman clambers onto his load to see and decides seeing is less helpful than stacking sacks. He jumps down and ties a rope that needed tying only in his mind. It is a good trick. Work is armour against questions. You adopt it, letting your glove find the strap ring and test the stitching as if the strap's health matters to war. At the shield wall, a crossbowman sets a foot in his stirrup iron and cocks without hurry. The movement does not invite runners or heroes. It says this is a part of the field where arithmetic holds. A quarrel rests at his boot like a dull bird. He picks it up, kisses 2 fingers to it for luck without drama, and waits for something worth the pull. At a lull, the trumpet repeats a phrase that might mean left, or right, or stay until a better phrase arrives. You favour none of those and let the cart sway answer for you. The driver looks at you and sees the cloak, then the mud on it, then the horse's bit. He nods to the bit as if it were the rank. You blink a slow yes. A spare shield leans against a sack. Plain wood, no paint left on its face. You angle it to cover your leg and let its weight do a small, honest work. Your thigh thanks you. The world that cares about paint and birds and names shrinks to weight and breath and the mechanical comfort of a strap against your palm. Trumpets on fields like this seldom agree. One voice belongs to honour, one to fear, one to a captain standing on a barrel who wants to be seen. Men choose which to obey based on which sound fits the shape of their day. Behind wagons, quiet becomes a shield, and counting the space between wheels becomes a profession. A boy with a bucket moves along the line of pavises, offering a sip to any who look at him rather than over him. He reaches you and hesitates. Your visor hides your face well enough to pass for a stranger. He notices the horse is calm and decides calm should be watered. The sip is warm and tastes of river and wood. You nod once and pass the bucket back to the boy's careful hand. A dented trumpet near the wagon bed catches your eye. Its bell is bruised in one place, a round that never smoothed flat. At the river bend, boatmen claim a dent like that carries farther across wet air, the note picking up off water and running true between banks. Lift your gaze no higher than the dent and let your hand rest on the cart rail where the claim might matter. You stroke the rail as if calming the wagon. The boards hold, and the driver reads gratitude in that touch. He turns his attention to the axle and the small squeak that bothered him earlier. Your quiet helps men choose their problems. He chooses wood over war and becomes your ally without a word. A rider shoulders into the gap, then backs his horse to the sacks and waits beside you. His visor is up. A welt cuts across his cheek. He looks at the pavises like a man who has decided to trust paint today. He does not ask your name. You do not ask his. That is mercy, a pact written in mud. Beyond the wall, arrows arc and lose heart in the distance. A few strike the pavis faces and stick with a thrum that carries, low and taut. The crossbowmen behind the boards nod to each other over nothing in particular. One scratches a sign on his wood with the iron tip of a quarrel, a habit like a prayer if a man needed one. Your shoulders settle. The space behind the wagons feels like a culvert that lets water pass without fuss. Air moves through. Talk stays low and practical. A trumpeter on a barrel tries again, then gives up trying to sound like anything but a man with lungs. He rubs the dent in his bell and looks at the sky as if it might be persuaded to be kinder. You find your buckle loop again and press it into the glove. The little circle print returns to your palm, familiar as a seal you can file yourself. Iron sings somewhere to the right where a smith strikes a shoe tight on a hoof. Work makes a clear sound even when war muddles its music. A chipped gauntlet finger snags toe on the cart's seam. You free it with care so the cloth does not tear. The gesture reads as patience to any watching. Your horse drops its head and snorts dust, unimpressed by history, attentive only to the next step and the taste of grit between teeth. Paint is coming off the nearest pavise in thin curls. Colours underneath show past lives, one band over another, green over red over blue, all of them proud once. The man who holds it taps the edge with a knuckle and judges whether the board will split if it takes a harder hit. He seems content to be bored. Bored men hold lines well. Somewhere farther down slope, the field buckles again. A dark mouth opens where ranks meet and do not agree. Shouts reach you stripped of sense. Only tone crosses the distance. More complaint than command. Keep the cart in your left eye and the pavis in your right, and let both anchor you to the useful present. A drum picks up near the tents, not for glory, only to tell men how to move their feet and when to stop. The rhythm walks toward you and then drifts away. claimed by different parts of the day. Your own rhythm is the cart's wheel over a flat in its band. The thump returns every third turn. Regular, patient, harmless. You breathe and choose the wall. Paint and wood and crossbowman's lack of interest are safer than banners and speeches. The choice is not brave, only tidy. You make it anyway and feel the small mercy of a decision that sticks. At the lane's bend, a painted pavis stands quiet, its colours dulled to chalk. The face holds your gaze and tucks you behind its flat calm. Wagon ruts ladder down from the pavis line and tug your horse into their groove. Each trench has a lip hardened by many passes. The hooves find those lips and argue with them. Mud rides high on the shoes and then sloughs off to the side in small fans. Ruts cross and braid where carts tried to change their minds and failed. Your knee bumps the cart bed as you angle along the tailboard. Thigh and boot press a message your mount understands. The weight shifts to the safer rut. Breath hitches once and then evens. A low grunt from the horse blends with wheel creaks until both sound like parts of the same old machine. Cart rail rubs your van brace with every step. A frayed rope tie slaps the rail in a regular way. The tailboard's thong squeaks. Sacks under rough cloth shift as if they would like to fall and then think better of it. You match the cart's lazy tempo because lazy reads as purposeful here. A quick favour buys more room than an order, you remind yourself. A flat stone sits near the rut where a wheel stalls. You step down, wedge the stone with your boot, and nod at the teamster as if this were your job. His thanks is a grunt and a foot's worth of space. The favour cost little. It spends well. Drips of grape must cling to the cart's underwork. Brown now, sugar cooked by air. A broken stave rides the ruts like a fish finning upstream. You lift it clear and lay it flat where the next wheel will want it. The crew sees that and adjusts. The space widens by an inch and that is a gift. On days like this, teamsters run the part of war no banner claims. They mind inches and wheels and wrench shoulders. They ignore big voices unless a lash follows. A drum means move, a hand on a spoke means stop. Clerks and provosts learn to look away from small dealings that keep lanes from jamming shut. A frayed fabric tie holds the paybook open where someone tallies cart allotments and fodder claims. The page lists wheel counts and mule teams by mark rather than name. The writing survives dust and shouts because tables need numbers that walk in a straight line. You ease the shield flat against the sack pile so its face reads as cargo. The strap ring sits snug under your palm. Your fingers learn its warm circle again. A thumb fits the nick you know. That small print on the skin steadies more than any speech could. A rut deepens, and the cart to your right lurches. The wheel flirts with climbing out and then slams back in. The driver curses the road by naming the wheel hub, a detail that comforts him. You keep clear of the hub's bite and let the cur stand as proof you belong near men who talk to wood. At the bend, a supply rack leans on two poles as if tired. Barrels kiss under it with soft thuds. A pile of tent pegs spills like teeth. You step over them and think about nails shaving their heads on stone, becoming less nail and more idea of nail. The field makes ideas out of many things by rubbing them down. Your horse lifts its head to a shout and then drops it again when the shout finds no echo. The crowns of the ruts shine where water sits. A shallow overflows and becomes a notch that a wheel will hate. You kick a clod into the notch. The fix is a lie. But lies that hold for 2 passes are useful. At the next jam, 2 carts face each other in a narrow. Both drivers insist they arrived first. Their oxen chew and do not offer opinions. You doubt the music of rank will settle this. You pick up the broken stave and lever a tailboard aside. One driver understands and pulls back half a hand. The other mutters and then imitates virtue. The lane breathes again. At the edge of the track, a boy holds a hook on a pole to drag sacks closer to a bed. He looks at your crest and blinks. You give him a task with 2 fingers and he takes it with relief. He may believe he works for you. You prefer he believes he works for anyone but fear. Wind carries a new thread of smell from the kettles where pitch warms for wheel seams. The smell rides low and stays under the carts. Tar streaks already dry on rims shine like old scars. You tap one with a glove knuckle and judge its sound. That small test marks you as a man who knows wheels, which is a better uniform here than gilt trim. Teamsters quietly claim a greased plank under a bogged wheel pulls carts free faster on clay days. Set the plank under the wheel rim and press until it bites the rut's lip. Men shoulder the cart. The wheel climbs with a jump that shakes the load. You nod as if you expected it and set the plank aside for the next stuck sole. Against a hedge, a mule refuses the slope and plants its feet. The muleteer stares at the sky as if the weather might offer help. You slide a hand along the halter and scratch the jawline where flies mass. The mule leans into the scratch and steps into the rut as if it was his plan all along. Respect for animals feels like borrowed rank. Two crossbowmen trot past with strings unspanned, their faces hiding their breaths. One carries a pavis half his size. He uses it as a door he can walk behind. You step out of his path because doors deserve space. The second glances once at your cloak and then at the mud on it. He sees a story that tells him nothing he needs. A wedge of scrap wood sits by a post with old tool marks. You pocket it and then immediately give it to the driver behind you because he looks like a man in love with a future problem. He tucks it into his belt with care. In his ledger of the day, you now have a line under ode, in a gap. The river shows again with slow bends that ignore the noise. Barges nose along the far bank, low and patient. The near bank takes the litter of men. A rope ferry drifts near the shallows without a load, and then pulls away when someone waves in the wrong tone. Boatmen learn to read tone the way others read flags. A wedge of open lane appears near a tangle of poles. You lean the horse into it before a captain can assign it to something noble. The move is precise enough to look permitted. The cart to your left creaks in complaint and then finds a better rut. Everyone gains, which is the only safe victory today. At mid-lane, a man in a stained surcoat raises an arm as if to stop you. His hand falls when his eyes reach your visor. Your mud says you belong to the category that refuses to be explained. He chooses a more soluble problem and turns to a stuck axle instead. They say tallies and favours make a camp run. They say rations and wheels decide what courage can afford. They say a lane with ruts this deep belongs to men who keep wedges under their coats. In such places, a clean ledger matters more than a brave song, and both are rare when dust climbs. An ox steps out of its yoke and blinks at its freedom as if surprised. The driver swears friendship at it and guides the animal back between the boughs. The yoke pins home, the cart inches. The driver cleans the curse from his mouth with a dry laugh. You pretend you heard nothing. Ahead, the camp road narrows at a gate of upright stakes. Two poles stand taller, their tops black from old smoke. A bar lies nearby to brace across them when men want to block passage. No one thinks to set it now. The lane is too hungry to be closed. A trumpet farther off tries a rally and earns a few turned heads. The rest of the ears on this road serve wheels and hoofbeats. Dust hangs under the tilts like drapery someone forgot to tie back. Your horse sneezes, and the sneeze sets the dust dancing again. At the last post before the stakes, the strap ring warms under your glove and leaves a neat circle. Scabbard mouth nudges your palm where the strap ring circle still tingles. The sword sits heavy, a public declaration you no longer wish to make. Your thumb finds the chape, presses the dent you know, and steadies. The gate stakes stand to either side like simple witnesses who do not care for names. Fingers work the frog. Buckle tongue slips free with a wet squeak. Plates rasp as weight shifts. You edge the scabbard forward to shorten its speech. A tilt of hip tucks it close, turning bright steel into a quieter shadow against your leg. Smoke drifts low between the wheel ruts and the stakes. Canvas darkens where pitch flecks land. The air tastes of heat and sour grape. Behind, a cart groans while an ox shakes its ears and forgives the day. Perhaps anonymity is a garment you piece as you go. The thought calms, it gives shape to the next act. You pick at the strap that holds the spolder and feel the knot laced by a squire who liked neatness more than speed. Hands slide under the cloak's throat. Tie, loosen, retie lower. The new line breaks the gilded angle of the collar. A badge stitched on your surcoat peeks like a tongue. You pinch it and tear along the seam with 2 sharp tugs. The sound is small and decisive. Threads cling to your glove in white hairs. A fellow rider clatters past, helm tilted back, eyes bright with the kind of courage that stays loud until it meets a ditch. He does not slow. The impression he leaves behind is a scolded air. You bow your head as if counting hoofbeats and give him your neck rather than your face. Mail at the wrist bites when you twist to reach the buckle at your back. A belt's end refuses the ring, then slips through. The new slack lets the cuirass hang less proud. The difference reads to strangers as fatigue. That is what you want them to read. Carts queue beyond the stakes. A hayrick leans and hides you from the ridge while you work. The horse's breath warms your knee. A plume feather, last of its cohort, loosens and escapes. It catches on a stake and looks foolish there. A very fine bird that misjudged the hedge. In the outer lanes of camps, gear marks men more than faces. Captains prize order but learn to accept disguises that look like work. The habit spreads. Heralds memorize colours, yet cooks and carters memorize who lifts, who shoves, who hangs back when a wheel needs hands. The paybook records stoppages for lost kit when officers press the issue. The rule turns on who notices and who writes. You ease the gorget strap until the iron stops gnawing at your jaw hinge. Jawbones thank you by popping once. The sound hides under wheel creak. A little roll of the head makes the visor sit lower. A droop that suggests bruises and long hours. An old cloak rides in your bundle. The drab one you keep for mornings that demand humility. You shake it free. Mud flecks fall and vanish into the general brown of the world at your feet. You swing it over the bright surcoat. The new shape erases lines a herald might love. Your spur shows a polite glint and betrays you again. You step to the cart rail and rub the rowel on a tar streak until it dulls. The driver watches and learns a new use for pitch. He smiles without teeth and returns to his sacks. Now confident you are a man who minds small truths. Breath slows. Nape sweat cools as air finds the gap you made. Your shoulders settle into the lighter hang. Without the badge and the trim, you become a rider who lost something and kept moving. Loss is common coin here. Common things pass. A boy with a rake hesitates by the stakes as if the fence grants him a title. He looks at your horse, not your face. He reads the drooping lines and decides you belong to the group that needs water, not orders. He turns away to fetch a skin. His choice shelters you better than any speech about duty would. The scabbard bumps your knee in a new place. You ride the rhythm for a dozen steps to teach the leg its bargain. A sigh leaks between your teeth and tastes of metal. The second sigh tastes of grape and dust. Both sighs disappear into the noise where they cannot be tallied. Near the hayrick, a shield leans with its painted beast flaking into the shape of a harmless dog. You prop your bright helm behind it and try the sallet you picked up in a swap last month. The brow sits low and plain. It lacks flourish. It suits the story you're writing on yourself. A pair of crossbowmen shuffle by, shoulders sore under pavis straps. One glances at your cloak's worn hem and sees a man more interesting to his own feet than to a sergeant. He keeps walking. The other tightens a thong with his teeth and does not waste a glance. Indifference is a blessing worth more than coin. Inside the stakes, tent lines rise in neat ranks that pretend to be streets. A canvas pavilion shows its ribs where a seam pulls. The sight offers a memory of quieter nights when seam talk and wine talk felt like serious business. You step from that memory before it makes you sentimental and obvious. Your hand finds the strap ring again. You press until the circle prints through the glove into the palm. The tiny pain keeps you inside the body you must steer. The horse flicks an ear and reads your steadiness as permission to stand and breathe. It lowers its head and chews invisible grain. A narrow cut runs along the belly plate where a blade kissed it earlier and found no home. You thumb the line, decide it looks older than today, and let it stand as a veteran's lie. A man with a split lip leans on the gatepost and squints the field. He's not counting men. He's counting reasons to act like a man who counts men. You thread a drab sash through the scabbard loops and knot it low. The new knot sits like a practical thought, not a flourish. The scabbard's voice quiets further. When you walk, it no longer announces your rank by the height of its swing. Paper lives poorly in rain, but pay books dry by campfires with stubborn zeal. When collections falter, lines thin on the muster roll and captains become accountants with tempers. Those tempers attend gates and kitchens with equal vigour. A man who looks like he eats without complaint walks through both places faster. You touch the crest thread on your cloak where a former badge left a ghost. The cloth feels thin there. Threads scratch the knuckle. You pinch off a loose end and watch it fall. It lands among many ends. None of them carry a name any longer. A wind shifts. It lifts smoke from kettles and carries it to the gate. The first lick catches in your throat and makes the eyes sting. That helps. Stung eyes explain drooped lids better than cowardice does. You let the sting stand and blink once like a man brave enough to cry where no one will see. A squire hurries past with a bundle of lances he cannot carry gracefully. He bumps your shoulder and apologizes to the air. You move half a step to make his path appear intentional. He will remember how the day let him keep his balance. You will remember that bundles signal the end of speeches. The scabbard sits flat now and behaves. The cloak dulls the gilt trim. Spurs do not shine. The helm reads as borrowed. Even your breath chooses quiet time with the cart's wheels instead of the trumpet's ambitions. You check each change like tally marks on the inside of your glove. Enough marks can make a new man. Letting the ember glow steady your eyes. You ease to stillness. Canvas pavilion walls breathe back ember warmth as you slip between guy ropes. The cloth shows stretched ribs where a seam pulled. Each stitch a small ladder for tired eyes. A painted spearhead on the peak points at nothing. The smell inside is ink, horse, and damp hide shared by many coats. At the flap, a fly walks a circle on a smear of grape must and wanders off, unimpressed by rank. Your steps find the packed strip that serves as a street. Tables crowded in 2 ranks, trestles braced by wedges and hope. Clerks sit with quills tilted like small flags in uneasy weather. A tin cup holds shaved ink sticks. A boy grinds them with care and water that has not yet learned patience. When his arm tires, the rhythm falters, and a dark tide crawls across the grit of the cup. You keep the cloak's drab hem between badge and daylight. The salet's brow sits low and plain. A strap ring prints the glove again, a private seal. It is a habit now, less a ritual than a hinge that keeps the hand moving in the right arc. A board beside you lists fodder weights in a hand that tries to be beautiful in dust. The hand loses, then tries again. At the first table, a paybook lies open, its spine bound in scuffed hide. A chip quill scratches the margin while a clerk argues with the driver over mule counts. He wins by refusing to hurry, which is its own rank. Coins clink as if they count themselves. The driver snatches his tally mark like a man cheating at dice and leaves proud of the theft you cannot see. Noise here is a net. It catches names and drops them. A captain calls for lists and gets only 1 page because the rest sticks to the bottom of the cup. A squire thrusts a lance bundle into a tent and knocks a stool over. The stool's fall becomes a question about who pays for broken legs. The question becomes a lesson about keeping lists off the floor. The lesson dies when a trumpet complains outside. You drift to the edge of shadow and let your horse's shoulder block you from a sergeant's patient eye. The sergeant counts by habit and loses the count when a boy with cups brushes his sleeve. He looks down with real sorrow for the spilled water and starts again. Compassion has poor arithmetic. A man at the next table weighs coins into a pan that sticks on its pin. He flicks it and smiles when it lies correctly for the wrong reason. Your smile answers without teeth. The trick makes you want to trust him, which is unwise. Tricks at tables travel faster than light on steel. Under the pavilion, third men keep a camp honest or ruin it by inches. Records draw lines through food, fodder, and courage. Muster book lists absentees by strap rings and crest threads. Ink smudged beside dates. Press the strap ring hard into your glove until the circle deepens and the hand stays still. A permanent creased clerk scratches his ear with the wrong end of his quill and leaves a small black crescent. He looks at the crescent with mild interest and adds another beside it for symmetry. He then calls a name like he calls for bread. A boy answers for a man too busy to care and is paid in a sigh. When names jam, the line twists and becomes a knot. A sturdy woman with a tally stick unties it by touching shoulders and pointing feet. She says nothing anyone hears, yet people go where she aims them. You adopt the third place in a queue that wants to be the fifth. Third men are invisible unless a bar drops. A steward at the far end has the better table. It stands true on even legs. His ink is clean, his penknife sharp, his tape of wax beads tucked in a pouch like a secret. He works only for captains today. He enjoys the shape of serving a narrow world. That world does not include you, which is a kindness. Quarrels in small tents are low and bitter. A man believes his name was misspelled to his hurt. He is right. The clerk believes names should bend to his hand. He is wrong. The exchange ends when the man spells his name with a knife point on the table's edge. The clerk rubs the carved line and loses. The knife wins because wood remembers. Your breath slows with the table's rhythm near you. The quill dips, lifts, scratches, and rests. The pattern becomes the metronome of a day that hums on despite fields buckling beyond the ridge. A coin winks along the edge and tries to roll. Two fingers halt it with the patient authority of men who halt many bad decisions. A short stack of billets lies by the ink cup, each a coarse slip naming a duty, a debt, a share. One shows a torn corner where someone wanted less future and ripped it. The clerk does not care. He reads the part that remains. Torn futures count if the piece that names the mule survives. When names blur, a muster roll forgets faces and recalls only rations. That is a mercy for men who do not want to be seen. You lean a little weight into the table's edge so the pose says waiting, not hiding. Waiting, in places like this, earns more space than truth. Light under canvas is kind to liars. It washes paint and softens badges. It turns guilt into dull honey that suggests old success rather than bright ambition. The colour suits you. A feather under your sallet tickles. You resist the urge to scratch and let the itch become a tiny bell that keeps you awake. To your left, a driver lays out small cords with knots to show loads delivered. The knots make a story in a language that follows roads, not books. The clerk reads it, frowns at a knot he dislikes, and reties it with the calm villainy of men who like straight lines. The driver accepts the retied truth because the cart is already empty. A captain arrives with mud up to his thigh and a laugh that works too hard. He throws it at the clerks like a cloak. One clerk catches it, folds it twice, and hands it back in a sober square. The exchange pleases no one. The captain leaves as if he decided to be brave in a different tent. You inch forward when a gap appears. The scribe at your table dips the nib and flicks a fly away with the grace of a priest dismissing a small sin. He looks at your cloak, your dull spur, your borrowed sallet, and sees a man he does not need to memorize. That sight could heal an anxious stomach. A chipped board under the trestle wobbles. You set your toe to it until the wobble stops. The clerk thinks well of the man whose foot knows timber. He reaches for the book with the wear you want. The spine creaks when he opens it. Letters ride the page like straw on a slow stream. You read the line with your name and feel it resist the idea of absence. A smear under it looks like last week's thumb. The clerk licks his own thumb to turn the page. His mouth tastes of ink and dust. He makes a face and does it again because habit rules men more tightly than captains. Nothing you do here erases a name. Enough noise might make a page lose interest. A shout from the entrance helps. Two men stumble in with a saddle between them and drop it on a stool. The stool breaks. The saddle slaps the ground with finality. The line laughs once and reforms in a new shape. You step back at the same rate others step forward. A tide nobody marks. The book closes with a soft thud. The clerk ties a thong around it. Not neat, end trimmed close. He tucks it under the table. where records go to sleep until someone is paid to wake them. Outside, air grows cleaner by 1 degree. The canvas sighs and flutters. You let it brush your shoulder once in farewell, and follow the pack track towards stakes again, at the fence. Place a palm on the palisade rail, and feel the dry grain. The wood's shallow bite steadies your hand while the lane murmurs behind you. Rain leather brushes your glove while the palisade rail nicks the Salle's brow. The horse mouths the bit and chews once, patient as a millstone at rest. Farther along the fence, men move the way gossip moves, in ripples that lose shape at the edges. A boy trots past with a skin and misses your eye. That is a kindness. Fingers pinch the cloak throat and find the knot you tied lower. A tug makes the drape hang slacker, a tired man's line. The scabbard rides flatter now and prints your thigh in a new place you accept. Breath works in a small, fixed pattern. You hold it to keep the mind from wandering toward banners. Wind drags a rag of smoke along the camp street. It snags on guy ropes and lifts again. The wedge of river beyond the vineyard shows in quick flashes through walking bodies and tilt poles. Birds skim above it and do not care who rules a bank in the afternoon. The thought hardens into choice. Drift has taken you as far as it can. Flight must be an act you name, not a posture that hopes to pass inspection. Rumour says captures came quick at the breaks and that no prayer reached them before the chords did. Rumour speaks in present tense when men are near. A cart stops with a cloth sigh. Voices scuff at the edge of the lane where captains cross a strip like town folk do when they mean to look important. Their words catch only in scraps. The important scrap is a crest named with regret and a list of taken men that gets longer with each telling. You do not wait for your colour to test the air. Reins lie across the horse's neck like a bridge you can raise or drop. You stroke the strap ring, then let it go. Hands go to the surcoat seam where a badge once lay bright. Threads show like stubble. You ease a small knife from the glove and tuck the blade under a stitched remnant you left from pride or laziness. Pride worked fast in the morning. Laziness kept a corner for the afternoon. The cut is quiet. Cloth parts the way a long-held breath leaves the chest. A hush and a sag. The bright weave shows half a grin, then none. Scraps gather in your palm. You crush them so they resemble nothing anyone remembers. The horse shifts weight and forgives the stillness. A man nearby rips a crest with less care and more anger. He throws the coloured pieces into a fire pit someone used last night for stew. The scraps curl into marks that look like letters in a language that wants to speak. The marks vanish when a boy kicks ash and looks for heat that is not there. You use a second stroke for the collar thread that pricked you at noon. The blade finds it with a simple click. It feels like pulling a tiny thorn you let stay too long for the story it told about belonging. The story does not fetch water. It does not make a cart move. Stitch ghosts remain. You rub them until the cloth muddies. The gesture answers a soft fear that some eye built for badgers will still see. A woman with a tally stick passes and points men into two tails of a line that will never be even. She does not pause for colours. She pauses for burdens, in tents near gates. Order is rehearsed like song even when no one knows the words. In such places. Lists of men learn to live without faces. Camp roll lists, cloth badges, strap rings, and mud-streaked reins. Press the strap ring into your glove until the circle prints and the hand stops shaking. You breathe once into the sallet and taste canvas dust. A trumpet skitters and gives up the tune it wanted. The sound lays flat across carts and does no harm. A fellow rider raises his helm for air and hides his eyes in that gesture. You learn quickly from small cowardices disguised as comfort. A squire hurries with a bundle of lances and grip too small for the load. One slips and strikes a post. The post rings lightly, a polite warning. The squire reddens and keeps moving. His embarrassment serves you, because eyes follow him instead of the knife in your hand. You cut the thread that tucks gilt trim under the cloak hem. It pulls like a hair caught in a comb. Loose strands cling to the glove, then drop to join old straw and ash. The dull hem makes you a person who expects to lift rather than be lifted. Men who lift pass gates faster. A murmured list of taken names floats from the lane bend. Jean, Pierre, Guillaume. The roll of vowels belongs to the north and to banners that came far to be told to stand straight. The list is not a roll call, it is an inventory men speak to test whether fear has grown the teeth they think it has. Teeth prove themselves quickly. You look down the slope. River glare winks through vines. In the low crook near the willows, small shapes move like beetles. Boats nose in and out with the caution of tradesmen who do not like to be remembered after work. You count bellies inside 2 skiffs, then stop counting because counting invents plans. Your horse breathes slow, fogging the bit with a faint thread. You touch the rein and feel sweat dried into salt. The taste on your lip agrees. A crosswind pushes a scrap of cloth against your greave and leaves it there, as if pinning a ticket you refuse to read. You flick it off with the knife's back. Neighbours mutter that captors prefer spurs and plume threads when they tally men for ransom under a ridge where dust smells of grape and tar. Lift your heel and drag the spur across a tar line on the cart's rim until the glint dulls. A captain points at a strip of open ground and says there will be honour there in an hour. His voice carries because hope hires a loud crier. Someone answers that honour pays slowly. The answer curls your mouth in a brief, private corner. Humour survives on little water. You move to the lee of a hayrick and finish the work. The last crest fragment gives with a soft sound that might be cloth or breath. You drop it into a puddle where river silt has settled and stir with a buckled strap until the colour becomes a brown you cannot name. A bird's shadow crosses your hand and goes on with its errands. A boy with a rake collects splinters near your boots. He glances at the cloak and then at your horse's tired eye. He decides you are a person who needs a drink. He holds up a skin, and you lift it with thanks in a nod only. The water tastes of wood and thyme. It tastes honest, which is better than brave. Behind you. 2 men argue over who owns a captured destrier standing in a patch of bruised grass. Their claims fold over each other until both readers greed. The horse yawns and fixes on a fly. You refuse the urge to watch men spend breath on possession while the day spends them. You keep your hands busy, knife away, knot retied, cloak smoothed, spur dulled, crest gone. The list is short and sufficient. Work is a rope across a ditch. It takes you from one bank to the next with no song required. You step back from the hayrick and let the wind test the new shape you wear. It does not find edges to snag. That pleases you more than any shout would. The horse flicks an ear. It hears a different rhythm now, lighter by a badge and 2 threads. You look once more toward the low bank and the tiny, useful chaos of boats. The smallness appeals. Big things ask for stories. Small ones only ask for weight and coin. You edge toward the lower path as the sour riverbank mud smell thickens. At the bluff's foot, coals in a brazier paint scabs on riverbank mud. The heat flickers, then shrinks as a man shields it with his palm to coax the coals. Below, skiffs cling to the bank under willow roots, little dark ribs against a slow shine. A pole knocks a stone with a hollow tap. The sound counts your breaths without asking. Hands test the slope and find purchase where brush holds. The sallet's brow kisses a twig and comes away with a faint resin scent. Your horse follows 3 careful steps, then hesitates when earth gives under the forehoof. You ease the rein and back him a pace to a shelf that reads safe even to animals. River edge shivers with thin waves that return whispers of cart noise from the track above. A patch of reeds leans and straightens, unsure which world to honour. Farther out, a ferry rope dips and rises where it crosses the stream. The rope hums low when the current presses it. The choice arrives shaped like an apology you do not owe anyone water, will take you from the list quicker than lanes will. Your mouth dries at the edges of that truth. It tastes like iron and old wood. Your hand finds the strap ring and prints the circle again to keep the thought steady. A skiff noses in, then out, then in again. The boatman stands with both feet apart, pole planted amidships. His jacket shows pitch scars and salt sweat in equal measure. He looks at faces and belts, not at badges. He looks at coin first, then at weight. That order comforts you even as it shames. Knees ease the horse closer to the willow fringe. A root knots across the slope where hooves will hate it. You loop the rein around a branch stub and test the pull. The stub holds. You loosen the girth 2 holes the saddle will not cut if he stands long. Your palm finds his neck and maps the familiar bumps in the sweat-dark hair. A small fire sits in a scooped pit near the bluff. Brazier set low to keep sparks from talkative grass. 2 men squat there and count shadows. One has a knife he sharpens without hurry. The other rolls a coin over his knuckles, a trick that would look jaunty in a safer year. Neither looks up when the pole thuds again. You strip the crest thread from the bridle brow band with a fingernail. The thread breaks, then breaks again. Reluctant to surrender its small pride, it yields. You pocket the bright flea to deny it the chance to glint for the wrong eyes. The horse blows out and throws a little grain of dried foam from the bit. A thin path slides behind a lean-to, made from 2 poles and a torn awning. It smells of old canvas and damp rope. The smell says tradesmen made this place to be useful long before today. You slip along the path and tuck into the shadow by a stump whose top bears the rings of years you do not need to number. On the water, a skiff kisses the bank and rests. The boatman measures you with a look as brief as a nail tap. A palm opens, casual, practiced. You reach under the cloak and find the purse with the smaller mouth. Coins count calm when fingers are sure. Your fingers are not yet steady, but they play the part. Weight leaves your hand. Weight answers from his palm with a satisfying clink. He nods once and points with his chin. The gesture says step like a man who knows boats. You step wrong with the first foot and correct on the second, because pride cannot balance on wet boards. Your horse watches with the puzzlement of a friend who sees you take a door he cannot fit. You return and set your brow to his, the iron cool, the forelock tickling your nose. The animal breathes a slow, hay-scented breath into your mouth. You taste it and decide not to light him with promises. You loosen the rein from the stub and leave it long. A boy in a cap touches his temple with 2 fingers, offering to hold. He stands light and ready the way boys do when they mean to prove worth for later. You nod, palm his wrist with the strap ring printing cold into both skins, and feel him firm up with the job. The horse lowers his head as if he approved your delegation. In such places, boatmen ignore rank if coin arrives at the right speed. They charge by belly space and water depth, not heraldry. Muster rolls forget men who change banks while lists ask after mules and arrows. Names that do not answer become weights that drift until tables close. You step down into the skiff. Boards croak. The boat's low sides smell of wet oak and tar, and of fish that visited yesterday and chose to leave. The poleman's partner, a narrow man with one ear chewed by something older than this day, gestures you to kneel by the prow to trim the bow. The pole digs and the bank slides backward. Mud streaks the side like ruled lines. You keep your shoulders below the rail and test the balance with a palm. The river feels calmer than men do today. Your breath takes the hint and evens to the tick of water under the boards. A call floats from above, too thin to carry sense. A reply answers it from a different mouth, larger and more certain. Neither voice lands here. The bluff cuts words into harmless scrape. A willow branch rides the boat's shoulder, then lifts away and leaves 2 green scars on the rail's pitch. You do not speak until the skiff clears the tangle of roots. The boatman expects the silence and prefers it. He plants the pole and looks over your head to judge drift and depth. When the current catches harder than he likes, he smiles without teeth as if wrestling an old friend who still wins on odd days. Coin makes men punctilious. He hints at a second payment with a small cough. You pretend to misunderstand and touch the strap ring once to invent patience in your hand. He makes a small ceremony of driving the pole deeper, then says coin first. You answer with 2 pieces that feel like teeth dropping into a wooden jaw. The sound pleases him. He pushes off with good grace and less suspicion. Behind, the horse shifts, then stands like a carved thing. The boy at his head leans his weight into the rein with a careful pride you recognize. You do not call a promise. The skiff noses past the ferry rope and trails a thin wake that mends itself with tidy indifference. A third boat cuts across a little upriver. Its poleman swears at the current in a dialect that wears more gravel than yours. He laughs after, small and private, because the river cannot be scolded and everyone knows it. The laugh makes room in your chest you did not think was left. Midstream, the water holds memories of storms you did not see. The pole sinks to different depths with no clear reason. The boat answers with a sideways shrug and goes on. Your knees find a comfortable ache. The sallet brim keeps river glare to a strip you can bear. You think of the horse again. The grain you have not fed him. The old cuts on the left shoulder that rise when spring comes on. The memory sits heavy for 3 breaths, then learns to float. Stories travel lighter when they cross water, belly down and face forward. The far bank grows from smudged green to layered brush and honest dirt. A sand lip shows footprints that confuse each other into anonymity. The poleman lines you up with a clearing behind drooping willow and points once with his chin. You nod and shift your weight for the slide. Wood grates and then rests. The boat stills as if surprised. You rise slowly, knees waking and complaining in their plain way. A hand to the rail keeps the posture unusual for as short a time as possible. You step to shore and let the mud take you ankle deep without a fight. The mud says welcome the way mud always does. You turn once and see the bluff you left. Brazier glow faint. The lane a smear, the camp a shape made of angles and breath. A canvas roofline lifts and settles near the centre. A pavilion's peak nodding above stakes. The sight reads as a heartbeat you can step away from now. By the willow's edge, a canvas pavilion ridge shows a slow, even sway against the bank's edge. The movement sits quiet in your eye while the river hushes under it. Pavi's boards lean near a canvas awning at the lower road, their flaked faces dull. 2 of them stand like extra shoulders for the men posted there. The canvas edge lifts and drops with a breeze that smells of willow and heat-bent pitch. Your steps slow to match the measured swing of that cloth. A rider in a plain sallet lets his horse stand sideways across the lane. His coat shows dried spray where mud had ambition earlier. Eyes like tally marks climb your cloak, stop at your spur rowels, and hover at the scabbard knot you retied low. He's the kind who counts first and speaks later. You shape your face into a tired version of usefulness. Hands hold the rein loose and honest. The horse shifts a fetlock and sets it again. You let that patient sound explain you. A cart behind complains about waiting, which helps. He moves the horse a hand's width to tighten the question. There is room to pass, but not without his blessing. His mouth says nothing. His stare says name, duty, destination, coin. Your answer arrives as posture before it arrives as words. The scabbard sits quiet. Cloak hides colour, breath stays steady. When he asks your duty, you report a short errand pitch from the kettles for axles near the river bend. Laces for a torn tilt, a word to a steward whose table knows your hand. You choose nouns with the weight of work. He studies the knots on your belt as if they whisper. A quiet nod toward the kettles admits your nouns to the day. Then he asks the dangerous one. Name. The single stone drops into the pond and waits for circles. Indirect speech would turn it dull. The syllables sound like a small knife in a leather sheath. Tested, then put away again. You let the pause that follows be short and firm. You give a name that is yours only in the way tools belong to a crew used by many, loved by none. He turns the name as if it were coin. The Pavis men do not look up. Their boards hold the road's breath and let it out calmly. Your horse shakes its mane once and stops when your hand touches the rein in a way only the 2 of you notice. A boy with a rope on a mule waits beyond and watches, mouth open around a dry thought. The mule blinks, bored by questions. The boy will remember the scene as a story the road told him, not as a test of you. That version suits you well. He nudges his horse forward until the stirrup iron almost kisses your knee. His eyes find the dull spur, the plain sallet, the drab cloak, the scabbard tied low. The picture you built stands on its own without you having to hold it up. He draws breath to speak, then spends it on looking past you toward the ridge instead. In camps that still believe in gates, a provost's job is to keep movement legible. They read reins, packs, and faces the way clerks rid columns. When the lower road tightens, entries thin across the muster roll and coin drifts toward the tables that close last. His gaze drops to your glove and the faint circle pressed in the leather. He cannot know how often you made that print to keep a hand from shaking. He can only read a man who clenches and unclenches when talk turns to lists. You tilt your wrist so the strap ring disappears under cloak hem. Then you scrape a thumb across the tar line on a cart's rim and show a little black on your palm. The stain adds to the story of errand and axle. The truth is a small tool. Today it tightens a nut on your lie. He touches your horse's rein near the bit and feels the salt dried there. A small smile reaches one side of his mouth. Not kind, not cruel, only practical. He names a captain and watches your brow for a flinch. You give him a sober nod that can mean served yesterday. Saw last week. We'll see when lists allow. Provost riders quietly claim a braided rein tells better lies than a tongue when dust tastes of pitch and grape. Press the gate bar with your knuckles and feel its dry grain catch skin in a single clean line. He rides a slow circle around your horse's rump. The circle says he has time, and you should not. You let your shoulders answer with patience. The scabbard does not swing, the cloak does not shine, the spur does not glitter. These are small obediences that please men who count. Behind him, one Pavis man cracks a knuckle and shifts weight. Another wedges a chip under his heel where boards bit. Their boredom is a shelter, a quiet weather you can use. You turn your face enough for the canvas to shade your eyes. Shade makes liars look like men who worked. He raises his chin toward the bluff and names the ridge again. Calmer. He says there is honour there, spoken as if testing whether the word still fits the shape of today. You let the word stop at your brow. The skin there is tired and does not rise to meet it. A cartwheel bumps a stone and starts an argument 2 wagons back. The noise frees 2 glances. One belongs to the boy with the mule, who decides to be impressed by wheels instead of men. The other belongs to the provost's horse, who decides to be interested in the mule. Your lane opens by a hand. He reaches for a leather thong at his wrist and pulls it tight. A man reminding himself to stay sober. Then he tells you to go, and not with glory, only with a flick of fingers that looks like he's brushing gnats. The gesture says he has bigger knots to unpick, and you do not look like a knot that holds. You incline head and knee in the modest bow of men who carry laces. Not news. Breath stays steady a little longer than you need it to, just in case a backward glance would catch you cheating. No glance comes. The Pavis faces look past you to the rest of the day. A sentence of plain wood and iron becomes a paragraph again. Road sound returns. A fly worries your gauntlet seam and gives up. The mule boy exhales loud through his teeth and follows your lead without meaning to. His rope tails in dust like a punctuation mark that forgot what it was closing. You pass the awning where canvas lifts and drops like calm lungs. The shade cools the back of your neck for 4 steps. That is enough to reset the body. The horse reads the permission and lengthens a fraction. 3 tenths on. A woman with a tally stick points 2 men toward kettles and 1 back to the ridge. She notes nothing you can see and changes everything those men will do for the next hour. Power in lanes speaks without writing. The provost calls a different name. Sharper. The sound of a nail driven in oak. You resist every itch of curiosity and look at a wheel hub instead. The hub turns with a pleasant shine where tar and sweat met and decided to be useful friends. At a bend, a narrow path ducks between stakes and a stacked rack of lances. The path offers shadow and the smell of damp cloth. It also offers fewer eyes. You take it as if finding shelter from sun, not questions. By the lower road, the rain sticks tacky against your glove, warm and worn. You keep that small grip steady while the lane noise softens behind you. Muster roll rides half curled under a forearm while rain grit still prints your glove. The table leans, leg shimmed with a wedge that remembers better timber. Ink sits in a shallow cup. Surface skin from heat and neglect. A chipped penknife rests across a quill to keep it from wandering. The clerk behind these small defences blinks once at your cloak and twice at your spur's dullness. A finger crooks without hurry. You step in so the awning's shadow lays a stripe across your brow. His look climbs from scabbard knot to belt to the strap ring pressure mark that never quite fades. He lets the silence do the test first. Silence favours men who own paper. A frayed thong holds the muster roll open at today's names. The page shows 3 columns that once agreed. The left one lists men by banner, the next by marks on kit, the last by stomachs owed. 2 rows carry a small grease smear where someone ate while counting. The clerk taps the margin beside a line that shares your first letter and waits for the rest to appear. He asks where you stood at noon, as if noon were a room with a door he can close. You answer with the pitch kettles and the axle that needed friendlier wood, with a tilt seam and a steward who knows your hand. The nouns are honest. Honesty is not the same as truth. It is only its cousin with better manners. The clerk turns the quill in his fingers and points the feather like a mild accusation. He does not aim it at your face. He aims at your belt where a purse might be. A small sound comes from his throat that is not a word. It is policy, condensed to the shape of a cough. A tally stick under his elbow is said to tilt toward heavier purses when heat and dust sit long under canvas. Press the belt ring against the table edge and feel wood bite leather in a single line. You ease the small purse into sight with the discretion of a man retrieving lint. The mouth opens without argument. A coin rests on your glove a heartbeat, then slips to the table so gently the wood doesn't notice. The clerk notices. His eyes stay neutral while his thumb forgets neutrality and strokes the coin as if judging its thickness. He recites a name that is not yours and checks whether you correct him. You do not. He repeats it with a different ending that might be yours one day if the right scribe gets tired. You accept both endings with the calm of a man who is thirsty and found clean water in 2 cups. A boy at the next trestle beats ink into water again, arm going round like a mill gear. The sound becomes steady and useful. It hides the small clicks as more coins test the table's patience. A cart outside squeals, then quiets. Someone has found the right tar seam. He remembers to frown at the purse as if the weight troubles him. He tries to make it a moral question. His quill betrays him by leaning toward the margin where simple solutions live. He points the feather at the 3rd column and says a thing about rations that does not need saying. Paper will believe him later, under canvas. Rules are like ropes. Everyone loves them until a wheel sinks. Then the man who owns the rope decides which knot is better than drowning. He reaches for a sanded block used to dry ink and moves it nearer the roll, as if preparing for rain that is only imagination. He asks the captain's name again. You give the same sober nod that means served or seen or will see when lists agree. He accepts the nod's grammar. He eyes your strap ring. He asks whether it bears a mark. You show the circle in the glove and let him read it as he likes. He hums a little sound when he writes, a song that might be about fish or debts. The quill scratches a path that changes you from standing in a field to standing in a lane near kettles at noon, while the ridge learned to buckle without you. The line is thin and sure. Ink dries faster than honour. He lifts the roll so dust slides and your row settles into company you could share at any table without embarrassment. He dips again and draws a dot with care that does not match the dot's size. Dots are ceremony for men who miss Latin. He then knots a thong around a billet that names duties dull enough to spare questions. He begins to speak, then remembers that speaking cements things. He keeps his mouth still and lets the quill talk. The quill's accent is plain and legible. A second coin clinks into the purse's mouth like a trout kissing a bucket. He hears it and does not grin. His thumb flicks the coin's rim as if wiping dust. Beyond the awning, heat presses low after a brief wind. The flap lifts and settles with a tired breath. A squire walks past dragging a bundle of lances that complains against stakes. The complaint helps your coin sound unimportant. He reaches under the table and hauls up a thinner booklet tied with twine. The cover bears a thumb-polished patch at the lower right. Pay book. Not for today, but for later whenever later arrives. He opens it 2 pages in and writes an abbreviation men use when truth needs a shorter coat. The coat fits. They say the difference between a man on a list and a ghost is 2 scratches and a coin, and that both scratches must happen while the coin still remembers your hand. He scratches. The coin forgets you and learns his pocket. He leans back the smallest amount, which in this world is the same as relief. He makes a fine show of disliking the purse. He disapproves of its manners. He approves of its weight. He queries your strap ring once more by sight, then moves his eyes back to the column where stomachs are accounted. A neutral passage settles in your head like a low shelf you can set thoughts on. Clerks match names to bellies because armies eat even when banners fall. Camp roll marks late arrivals by strap rings and dust on cloak hems. Lift the strap ring into his light and hold it long enough for him to nod without thinking. He takes the cue and writes another dot. The dot is not a sentence, it is a breath. He ties a short cord around a small billet and hands it toward you as if it were a loaf. The billet says something about axle pitch. It also says you existed in a helpful shape at noon. A man behind you tries to trade a mule count for a ration double. He offers too much cheer, not enough coin. The clerk's mouth flattens to a line that looks like a small cut. The man's cheer drains away into a boot scuff. He learns the lesson without a sermon. You do not turn. Ink smell thickens and then burns down. The boy grinding sticks wipes his arm with his shirt and leaves a grey stripe between elbow and wrist. He looks pleased with the proof of work. Work is a language everyone here respects more than speech. You pass the billet to your glove's palm, where the strap ring circle prints faintly through. He notices the print and decides it looks like a habit, which is next door to loyalty if a man squints. He nods at nothing and slides the roll back so the thong can hold its page again. On the trestle's edge, the penknife balances like a small seesaw. Its tip points to a stain that could be wine or tar or both. The knife wobbles and then rests. You match it. Rest is a shape you adopt for one breath, then another. He clears his throat as if to remind himself he exists outside paper. He asks a direction. You lift the billet, it answers for you. He waves two fingers as if brushing gnats. The gesture becomes permission because no one contradicts it. You step back under the awning shadow and feel your shoulders loosen. A knot you did not know was tight. The roll lies flat. The book tucks under the table again. The coin goes invisible in the place where coins like to sleep. At the flap, mail rings once against a buckle, then settles. Spur rowel kisses a buckle and scrapes once as the world tilts from orderly lanes to loose fire. Canvas to your right leaps with a quick orange stitch, then another, as if a careless hand hemmed the day with flames. Wind grabs the stitch and pulls. The seam runs toward the kettles, toward the hay, toward anything willing to catch. Riders burst through the tent alleys like sparks carried on a bellow's breath. Hooves thud where benches stood an hour ago. A tilt pole snaps with a tidy report. A bundle of lances slews from a boy's grip and fans across the path, each shaft choosing its own small adventure. Heat wicks low along guy ropes and climbs towards ribs that complain as they scorch. Your heel lifts enough to free the rowel from the buckle. A half step sideways sets a crooked line you can follow without imitating anyone else's panic. The scabbard sits flat and loyal. The cloak drags a beat behind, as if still deciding what this new song demands. Smoke tastes of grape, tar, and old canvas. Breath shortens until it agrees to a pattern that keeps feet and hands in the same story. A rider shoulders past with eyes you recognize from the ridge bright. Confused, not angry, hungry only for a way through. His mount shies at the heat-ruffled air and bangs a kettle with its hip. A hiss lifts as pitch spits tiny stars. You angle behind a tent stake and let the riders hurry pull watchers away from your steadier sin. To your left, a cooking awning folds and shows a scatter of bowls that never learn to be brave. One skitters under your boot and cracks, a plain sound that does not deserve a poem. To the right, a standard staff leans against a crate where someone thought it safer than the field. The cloth slumps like a tired arm. You do not touch it. You do not want cloth to remember you today. Wind runs toward the river and drags fire with it in quick tongues. A tilt ridge smokes and then yields. The ribs glow and show their nails, a clean geometry briefly proud. Hoofbeats cut that geometry into shards of attention. You keep yours small, 2 strides to the broken shield, 3 to the overturned stool, 4 to the water tub that just became a man's best thought. Ropes sag and then sing as they part. The song snaps short. A rider without a visor slashes at an opening that is not you and does not become one. He vanishes between tents in a melody of curses he did not mean to write. A boy throws a blanket at a low flame and misses by a pace. You step where the blanket lands because it turns ground safe for a beat. In a breath-long calm, the camp's habits break into plain fragments. Cooks kick embers into dirt. Clerks lift books first, tables second. Squires go for lances because that is all they know. Teamsters save wedges. Each choice moves a pond-sized ripple that meets another and makes a shallow chop you can ride if you bend your knees and stop wanting straight lines. A bale of straw bursts and steps into the day as smoke. The smell is barn and safety and the morning of a young year when nothing hurt yet. Then it is only hot air. A mule brays in a way that resembles commentary. The comment is fair. You duck under a guy rope and become a man who respects fabric, not a man who deserts. Words matter less than angles here. Third men say tents burn fast because canvas learns fire the way a scribe learns a letter, by repetition until the hand stops shaking. When canvas lifts in heat, patrols turn from counting deserters to catching thieves, and lanes become everyone's business. A few riders cut alleys on purpose to break morale, more simply run downhill because hooves prefer down. None of those reasons care what your crest used to mean. A rider bursts out of smoke with his sallet tilted so far back it might fall. His hand saws at a rein that wants a better teacher. He looks through you like you are tent wall. You step a crooked half beat, and he finds enough space to invent dignity again. His horse leaves 3 bent pegs as souvenirs. Canvas slaps your cheek, heat licks your knuckles. You bring the cloak edge across the mouth like a monk without vows. A stitch pops at the shoulder with a noise you hear more in the teeth than the ear. It is a busy time for small noises. A pot lid skitters into your shin. You kick it aside and take the kick back in balance. A cart ahead lists with one wheel in a trench dug by panic. The teamster is gone, perhaps to fetch men, perhaps to teach the cart the language of prayer. You set a hand to the spoke and push a finger's width. The load shifts and decides to help itself. The wheel climbs, then sulks along. The brief favour buys you a lane no one can argue you stole. Your horse finds you at the corner of a tilt, eyes steady, head low. He has opinions about smoke and expresses them by loading his breath with small snorts. You take his rein and set him behind a sheet that still resists flame. The sheet billows and imitates surf. The horse accepts the pretense. A boy appears with hope and holds the rein without bidding. He's decided to be brave for a living. A rag of fire walks a rope toward a ridgepole where worse decisions wait. You lift a water tub with both hands and throw its small lake uphill. Half lands where you wanted, half becomes steam with enthusiasm. A crosswind laughs in its throat and blows the rest into your sallet. The bath earns you a half breath of clean nose and the chance to see the next obstacle. Sparks ride low and find dry things, straw wisps, feather scraps, a kerchief forgotten on a peg. You step crooked, always crooked, a letter that never finishes. The ground underfoot is all the maps you trust, now trampled grass, churned mud, the slick edge where grape skins still remember sweetness. You lift knees high between ropes because dignity and efficiency are not friends today. A rider with a couch spear appears where no spear should be. His point hunts a shape the rider can blame for fear. You refuse to be a shape. You duck behind a supply rack and let the spear write its line on canvas instead. The line gapes, then smokes. A tidy failure transformed by heat into a worse idea. The rider keeps going and forgets he launched a fire. You edge along a stacked chest rail and let the woods bite remind your glove of solid math. Hinges complain in a familiar language. The chest holds, then settles, indifferent to men. You breathe at its tempo and use its bulk to hide one more change of direction. Dust tastes old here. Barn old, not battlefield old. Barn old feels like a gift. A figure stumbles from a tent with a paybook under his arm and surprise in his hair. He chooses a direction and trips on his own choice. You help him up by the elbow because people who lift are never the wrong kind in lanes. He nods and runs faster, book hugged like bread. A coin drops from his sleeve and chooses its own owner. On your right, a rope from the ferry hums faintly where it crosses a gap in the brush. The hum vibrates in your palm when you touch the air between poles. Your body invents the rest. You aim toward the shallower dip where willows kiss bank and water. Between you and that mercy lie 2 tents, a tangle of pegs, and an honest raid's worth of confusion. A rider tries the alley and finds your horse in it. The boy holding the rein does not move. The horse does not blink. The rider measures both and invents a new alley. Sometimes stubbornness saves more lives than grace. You pass behind the boy, let your hand touch his cap with one finger. An anointing made of dust and rumour. A canvas wall to your left sighs as its seam lets go. Orange crawls up like ivy that chose speed over patience. You do not stay to see the panel fall. A bench ahead offers the clean geometry of 2 legs and a board. It becomes your bridge across a patch of ground where the mud announces history you do not care to read. Noise changes shape toward the ridge. Shouts there lose their uniforms and become voices that want water, or mothers, or luck. Here, the voices do not ask, they report. Kettles boil or fail, cords hold or don't. Men live in these reports for hours at a time and then forget them the way smoke forgets its own column. Your path crooks again to avoid a dropped spear that looks sleepy and is not. The point gleams where someone cleaned it too well. You choose to respect that effort and step wide. A tilt stake underfoot shifts and becomes a lesson about leverage. You learn. You correct. You go on. The scabbard bumps your knee. A soft reminder that tools cannot change story by themselves. Knees answer with serviceable aches. You let the aches count distance when eyes sting. 30 steps become a paragraph that gets you past the worst heat. After the paragraph, air thins of smoke just enough to feel like a permission slip. Smoke thinning. An oil lamp glow marks a narrow path toward the ditch and the bank. Palisade rail guards the narrow path that slips toward the ditch where the oil lamp glow thins. Splinters press your glove as you test the rail and feel how dry wood tells the truth. Canvas behind you breathes, then snaps. Ahead, earth darkens at the lip where many boots chose the same bad angle. The river's hum travels up through mud and roots like a rumour that prefers water. Hands release the shield from its strap and let its weight slide to your thigh. Elbow rises, wrist turns, and the board that told stories about you becomes only wood. You tip it once as if to thank it, then lean and wedge its rim under the rail to hide the shine. Knee finds the next step. Breath ticks on a short, workable count. Ditch side shows scratches from heels and the bite marks of pegs pulled in a hurry. Clay edges crumble where men tested faith and found gravity instead. A wet patch holds the day's prints until the next man erases them. Your boot touches, slides, catches. The other foot follows with the exact, unheroic care a life deserves. It occurs that dropping weight is faster than finding courage. The thought helps. It is the kind you can carry without showing it. Fingers go to the buckle that still argues with ribs. Metal grudges. Then forgives enough to let the plate hang lower. You breathe in the new inch like a gift you paid for. Your horse's rein tugs once where you tied it to a root higher up the bank. The rope answers with a small creak and then settles. You look back long enough for his eye to find you. The look is a promise measured in good hay and time. You let it stand and turn to dirt that will not care what you believe. The shield wedge holds. The rail gives you a straight line your hand can trust. You slide along it. Boots reading ridges and hollows. A thorn scores the sallet and leaves a pale line that feels like a sane man's signature. You bend lower, cloak dragging, the drab hem gathering burrs and the day's dust without complaint. Below, water shows in narrow mirrors between reed stems. The surface is close enough to smell cold, far enough to respect. A low hummock where earth piled from the ditch promises firmer footing. You count 3 steps, then 2. Then do not count because counting becomes wishful when the ground argues. Heels dig, weight drops. You skid the last hand span and land on both feet with a shock that tells knees they are still yours. Hands find clay and push. The other side climbs you in small, ugly distances that feel better than any banner could. A root catches your toe and fails to own you. You win by inches. Behind, the tent alleys spit another rider down slope, faster than sense. He shouts at shadows and leaves his shout with them. A cloth panel detaches, lifts, and drifts into the ditch like a slow fish. You step past its edge with the courtesy you save for hazards that meant no harm. Under brush, dust compacts into a workable cover. Stems stripe your greaves with faint green smears. You move at the speed of men who learn not to kick stones. A low log, half in earth, makes the next choice for you straddle, shift, breathe, and pray only to friction. The prayer answers in plain math. They will look for colours on the road and for fine spurs at the kettles. They will ask names in bright places and write them down in straight columns. Here along the bank, men read weight, mud, and whether a body fits through willow without shaking it. Those readers are harder to lie to, but kinder when convinced. A brief stillness opens, thin as paper. You use it to cut 2 leather ties that kept a vambrace proud and let them dangle. The loosened plate stops scalding your wrist. You curl and uncurl fingers until prickles turn back to skin. The hand resumes its job without poetry. Canvas, carts, and voices settle into a distant arrangement that might be order learning to speak again. In lanes like those, someone will list who returned and who did not, because lists comfort men who sit still. Mustard names are bones for stories to hang on. You prefer tendons, they move. A hard, neutral knowledge crosses the bank with you in hours like these. Garrisons turn from speeches to head counts, and paper forgives only what ink can excuse. Camp-roll belongs to the ones who stay. River paths belong to those who leave. If a gap opens, it closes by nightfall and becomes a rumour. Camp-roll notes cut badges and strap rings stained with pitch near the river ditch. Press the palisade rail, lean into the grain, and step sideways where the lip breaks to a manageable shelf. A clod gives and becomes a slide. Your thigh takes a stripe of clay you accept the way a man accepts a new scar. You tap the scabbard to check its promise of quiet. It answers by not swinging. That is enough. Pride drops somewhere you do not see. You do not go back to look for it. Brush closes over your shoulder like a gate with no interest in ceremony. You duck and feel twigs write short lines on the cloak. The lines say tired, not guilty. Tired passes, guilty lingers. Dirt prefers tired. Dirt is your court today, downstream. A rope hums where the ferry line crosses open water. The sound threads through willows and catches the ear the way a smith's rhythm carries in quiet towns. You turn toward it because songs that remember their beat bring you home more often than speeches do. A scrap of gilt thread in your glove seems scratches. You pluck it free and roll it until it vanishes into brown. Better to feed brightness to mud than to eyes. A beetle works past your boot and insists life continues with or without your reputation. The beetle is right. Your heel finds the bank's lower path. Mud holds without complaint. Reed stalks whisper around knee and shin. You steady a hand on a willow root and slide the last drop to a narrow tongue of shore. The smell down here drops 10 degrees cooler. A clean damp that erases canvas smoke at the back of your throat. A skiff bumps the bank and pauses as if thinking. The pole knocks once. The knock travels like a small command. The boatman lifts his chin the same inch as earlier and measures your shape against his belly space. You answer by standing smaller than pride would prefer and larger than fear wants. The measurement pleases him because it looks like coin. You reach under the cloak for the purse with a quieter mouth. 2 pieces pass like fish from shade to shade. His hand swallows them without compliment. He turns the skiff with an economical push that tells you he has performed this absolution for more men than you will ever meet. You glance back only once, up the bank, along the path where the palisade rail still holds your shield's rim invisibly under its shadow. That board can tell no more tales on you now. You've written it a new job stay. Wedge, hide shine, be wood. A willow switch pats your helm with a soft, almost friendly touch as you step into the skiff. Knees bend, balance finds you. The board's creak is a familiar greeting, honest as any oath. Water lifts, answers, settles. You do not promise the boatman anything louder than the coins already did. He would distrust big words. You trust his wrists. They know the river's grammar better than any captain. He plants the pole and the bank begins to move away, obliging you by pretending to be the one in motion, toward dusk. Brazier heat presses your cheek near the skiffs while shadows change hands. Embers squat in the brazier like red coins, their skins crackling once as wind noses in. A man cups his hand to save the glow and mutters to the coals the way a host begs a guest to stay. Willow leaves tick the canvas panel and then still. Night lays a cool palm on the back of your neck and persuades breath to slow. The ferry scow noses along the bank on its rail of current, broad and low, planked like a crude floor dragged sideways. A dark cable dips and rises from a post at the upstream point, wet fibres gleaming where they climb to a pulley on the far shore. The line hums a little in the crossflow, a low note your bones notice before your ear admits it. Men crowd the deck with cautious feet. 2 mules stand hip-shot at the near corner. A rider eases his mount on behind them and looks sorry after the first step. Boards answer with a tired croak that says they carried worse today and lived. Near the prow, a lantern would betray too much. A bowl lamp with a short wick does the more honest work instead. Its thin flame holds steady enough to count as agreement. A bowstring speaks from the dark upriver. The sound is small and certain. A hiss shears the night beside your cheek, then bites water. Another follows and finds a plank with a sound like a nail tapped once. The boatman lifts his chin and makes a motion to keep heads low without starting a panic. He sets the pole, then thinks better of trusting depth alone, and reaches for the nearer guideline to haul. Weight leans the deck. Your knee goes soft and catches. The drab cloak does not snag. The scabbard sits as taut. You blessed it earlier and it remembered. A mule brays as if disputing the geometry of crowded boards. Its owner murmurs to a halter ring. The ring answers with a polite jingle that helps no one. Midstream is a kind of silence made of noises that cancel each other. Water knocks the hull in a rhythm almost kind. Men breathe, shoulders bump, leather straps creak, and then the pattern settles into a workable music. Your palm finds the gunwale and reads the board's uneven tooth. The strap ring prints the glove again and tells the hand it belongs to a plan. Heavier hiss. A quarrel thumps the deck and stays. The rider's mount startles to see a thing new and wrong sprout between its forefeet. Hooves slam and skitter. The deck answers with a short complaint and a longer threat. The animal crowds you sideways into the mule's warm flank, then into the post where the ferry line angles from the bow. The mount is stronger than your plan. Heat from its chest steams in the cool air. The smell is grass turned to breath. A stirrup iron bangs your shin and hunts for ownership. Your body offers a quick treaty instead. Heel snaps, spur rowel catches hair and air. You kick free and spin into a crouch that makes you smaller than fear thinks you are. Another hiss shears the dark. Someone swears in a Rivertown voice that barely belongs to any army. The boat lurches as the mount stamps at the cable, then crowds a mule that shoves back with the stubborn logic of mules. A man reaches for a rein and finds a mouth that wants no advice from human hands. The ferry groans in a tone men remember when they talk about good luck later. You move toward the far side where the guideline rises from water to post. Boards rise and dip under boots. Each step a little argument with depth. The line runs cold under your palm, rank with wet plant and old pitch. It bites and persuades even skin inside glove. You set both hands and feel a hum of current like a living thread. Pull. Shoulder and back answer with plain labour. The scow takes the hint and noses toward the right angle again. The rider's mount surges and slams hindquarters into your hip the way a gate swings wide by accident. Balance leaves for a heartbeat and comes back annoyed. You keep the line because letting go would be a sermon that ends in water. Breath grinds into the count of your hands. Out goes free. A thought in clear wooden sentences passes through boats carry animals because bridges are dreams when days go wrong. Crews measure bellies and hooves by how tight the guideline sings. Men ashore with bows prefer to make cables fail rather than chests. In such crossings, noise asks to be ignored and the line decides who reaches bank. The boatman works at the aft post with a practiced patience that does not apologise for desperation. He leans without drama. The deck agrees to swing. The ferry's nose begins to point toward the forward bank again. Obeying the low grammar of water and angles, a quarrel drops short with a sigh that would have been content if it found meat. It finds none. Behind your shoulder, the lamp's wick gutters and corrects itself. The little light prints a quick, slant shadow of your hand across the line, a reminder of how much of you is held by a fibre as thick as a thumb. A mule snorts and shakes its head at ghosts. The rider's mount edges, then dares a half-rear that promises worse. The rider speaks into a mane in a tone that hopes to be remembered as the command. The knight wants to remember it as fear. Another arrow shivers into the water with a weighty plop. Ripples lick boards and go about their business. You lean harder, hands stepping along the line like a man climbing a ladder toward a roof he distrusts. A tarry smear slides under your palm. You adjust grip and take the sting. Pain is clean math when stories get noisy. The mount chooses the worst time to invent a new direction. It plunges across the deck toward the very angle that steadies the boat. The animal's shoulder drives your hip into the post. Your heel loses purchase and meets the river with a chill that redraws the world. Cold climbs your calves and reminds knees they have choices. You pick the one that keeps feet under you. Arms clamp the guideline. The ferry heaves away from you, then back. Water grabs the cloak and adds weight you do not want. Breath narrows to a place behind the tongue where fear knocks and is told nobody's home. You brace one boot on a lower cross plank, feel it flex, and shove back to level. A hand you do not see bumps your shoulder in a courtesy as brief as a nod. The boatman sees and does the wisest thing. He says nothing loud. He plants his pole to keep the stern from yawing and sets his weight on the aft line, with a promise that invites you to keep your promise to the forward one. The scow edges out of its sulk and resumes the slow trade with water that men call progress when nobody shoots. A stray carcass of a barrel bumps the side, then turns and bobs along like a drunk with places to go. The lamp flares at a gust and shows the mount's eye, too white for sense. The rider chooses to dismount while pretending he meant to all along. It is the right lie. His feet find the deck. He shortens the rein to a prayer and keeps the horse's head close to the line so it cannot imagine open water. Hands burn. The strap ring print inside the glove presses back. A small halo telling the palm to hold shape. You shift grip once more, this time to the dryer span near the post, and the bite eases into a pull your shoulders were born to know. A rhythm sets reach. Haul, set, reach, haul, set. The boat nods in small bows that feel like its thanks. From the slope on the far side, the hiss thins and then stops. Perhaps distance earns you mercy. Perhaps the archers have better business upriver. Perhaps the line's angle convinced them you're not worth their patience. No one debates it aloud. Gratitude wastes air. Mud sour smell changes to leaf cool as the scow slides into the shelter of drowned willow. The hum through the line softens. A post waits like a simple answer. You hook an arm up and over, chest against wet bark, and pass the line across a notch scarred by many days like this one. The boatman is there with the loop before you ask. He grunts, the knot agrees, and the ferry stops trying to teach you to swim. Your knees inform you they have earned time. You agree without bargaining. The rider's mount finds 4 feet, 2 eyes, and a breath that does not climb the throat. It stands with the offended dignity of an animal that forgave you despite not understanding why. You forgive it back because that makes men better. 2. You climb onto the bank first. Mud takes your soles with quiet gratitude. Brush touches the sallet with a friendly tap, like an older brother advising patience at a game. The deck empties by careful inches. Mules step in angles no geometry book loves. The rider leads his horse onto land and pretends he never wavered. This is also a right lie. Hands open. The line leaves with a tiny reluctance, then springs happier to its long task once more. You flex fingers and discover burns that will not impress anyone. The strap ring print remains, a private seal on a day of public instruments, across the reed fringe. A trumpet carries thin over water and thins to a thread. Strap ring chills under your glove while the trumpet thread dies thin across the reeds. The sound goes to thread, then to nothing at all, like a cord snipped clean. Night puts a cool thumb on your wrist and slows the pulse to a number you can manage. Willow drips settle one by one, tiny taps on leaves above the bank. Cook-fire coals sit in a shallow scrape of earth, a practical circle blacked by old meals. A plank lies across 2 stones for a pot that is not here. You kneel and find the tinder a previous soul left under the plank, dry splinters and shavings that smell faintly of resin. Breath moves the embers. They answer with a sleepy glow and the sudden decision to live harder. Your hand goes to the cloak's throat and then lower to the pocket where you hid the badge fragments. Cloth on cloth makes no sound. The colours seem heavy for their size, as if woven pride stored weight you never counted. You bring one to the coals and hold it as a man holds a small confession over water. The first touch is shy. Threads curl inward, their bright dye darkening to a stubborn brown before they surrender. A tiny smoke stands, thin and precise, and draws the eye the way a spider's line catches light. You lift the scrap, turn it, and lay it back where the coals breathe strongest. The curl becomes a twist, then ash that gives up shape. A second piece shows the stitched jaw of a beast that meant to look bold. You lay that jaw to sleep. The teeth go first, bright bits pricking to crumbs. The jaw softens, the cheek falls, the eye hole caves. You do not blink. Let the heat do your erasing. The smell rides up, sharp and sour. Cloth and old oil and the ghost of dye the colourman swore would never fade. The billet from the table lies in your palm next. It is a coarse slip with a word for axle, a line that made noon look useful. The edge carries grit from the trestle. You fold it twice and the fibres complain like a door that wants oil. The fold stands a moment, tries to remember duty, then slumps when heat finds it. Letters bow into glow. The small dot the clerk made lasts longer than it should. It turns to a black bead, then to a memory no river can read. A ribbon from your plume curls in the other hand, hard and pretty even now. Pride chose it months ago because pride loves gloss. Pride does not fetch water. Pride does not wedge a wheel. Pride burns like anything else once it sits on coals long enough to forget speeches. You lay the ribbon down and watch its edge rise like pastry. It bubbles, it falls, a thread flickers green, then winks. Cool air off the river gathers under the sallet's brow. It tastes clean, leaf cold and simple, a rinse between smoke breaths. You ease back on your heels to give lungs a fair turn. Knees answer with small protests that tell you exactly who you are and where. That is good. Fancy aches are for songs. Yours are for walking. On the far bank, camp shapes copy the sky's nervous light. Tents make teeth against the low red. The ridge itself shows a skin of ash and bravery with holes burned through. A metal clang lands late and then stops, embarrassed to be the last loud thing. Water flattens that shame into ripples and spends it on the shore where no one collects debts. Heavier cloth goes next. The biggest crest piece holds the seam you hated earlier, the pricking that rode your shoulder like a line you had to keep straight. It fights. Edges smoulder while the middle refuses the idea of heat. You tear it narrower to shorten its speech, then lay each strip where a coal glows fierce and certain. The strips obey as if the new law was theirs all along. Your scabbard bumps the knee in a polite reminder that metal still belongs to you. Metal will keep belonging no matter what cloth says. You angle the hilt under your arm to hide the shape from anyone who might read shadows. The strap ring catches a spark and hisses. You thumb the hot spot away and smell hair burn a little where the glove frayed. A third scrap reveals a line of guilt that loved sunlight too loudly. It squirms into tight spirals and vanishes, each coil a last flourish written by flame. Ash stacks on ash until a stirred breath collapses it to grey flats. A fragile geology a finger can change. You make the smallest circle with a twig and let the circle claim you more than any badge did today. 3 neutral sentences settle beside your fire like stones. Men trust paper because paper looks like a road. Lists serve tents because tents pretend to be towns. Ash does not testify. Ash drifts and forgets. You draw the twig across the coals again as if crossing out a line. The act satisfies only yourself. That is fine. You press the strap ring's edge into your palm again and count the print deepening when you lift. The small circle has followed you all day. Obedient as a trained dog, you keep it. A thought in plain wood language crosses your head. Not every book can be burned by one cook fire. Not every line can be erased by one river. Enough distance can be a kind scribe. Though, enough mud can be a forgery men accept because it is what their boots already believe. Quiet on this bank has a different accent. It is willow hush, frog throat. The soft hush of fine silt trading bars with the current. You sort the bits left in your palm by feel and choose the last bright one. A thin standard edge with a thread you hated stitching and loved to be seen in. You lay it on and hold your fingertips above the curl so you can feel the heat's grammar as it conjugates pride. A loose nail near the plank gleams. You pinch it and push it into the earth by the coals to hold a scrap in place. Iron conducts a little heat to your glove and reminds you how many tools today asked for trust. Nails, wedges, poles, lines, rails. None of them cared about names. All of them kept promises as long as hands did. Wind off the bend freshens, and the fire lowers itself in good manners. You bank coals with a plank's edge, patient, pushing dull red together like friends told to share a bench. Grey skins over. A single thread glows under the skin, a faint nerve that refuses to die. You tap, it dims, then bravely tries again. You smile into the sallet where no one will see and tap once more. Across the dark water, a low cry rises and falls. It might be a horse learning that grass can be tasted on both banks. It might be a man deciding to sit down. You let your body believe the simplest version, because simple stories let shoulders lower without argument. Grape sourness lingers at the back of the mouth, a memory of trampled rows that became your road out. You scrape ash off the plank and shake it so the breeze will take what it can take. Tiny lights lift, fail, lift again, then give up and become part of the bank where you kneel. You watch long enough to see the christening end. No more colours remain in your palm. No more scraps whisper from a pocket. Work is a little complete paragraph, humble and final, the billet's last corner, which hid under your thumb for comfort, turns up and shows its clean edge. You touch it to a coal and listen to the tiniest crack. It is the sound of a lie becoming boring. That delights you more than it should. Boredom is a gate that swings open with no creak. A reed pops, a gnat lands at the edge of your glove and reconsiders. The river sends a chill up pant legs where the mud soaked in earlier and forgot to leave. You shift to a drier patch and seat the scabbard so its mouth points away from grit. The habit feels like superstition and discipline in equal measure. You nudge the plank back to its original job, a tidy man's gesture that no one will credit to you. Then you pick 3 pebbles and set them in a row by the fire pit, not for luck, only to show that someone finished a task and left the place easier for the next tired soul. The row keeps its modesty and stays small. The strap ring cools in your palm now, the circle prints clear on skin. Its neat boundary comforts the part of the mind that wanted lists when lists served you and learned to fear them when they stopped. A day holds many boundaries, most are lies. This one is only a mark. It tells the hand to close and open, to keep, to let go. Above the reeds, the sky gives back a dim scatter of light, not stars enough to count, enough to remind you the field stops somewhere and the river keeps its lane, no matter whose boots sought to boss it before noon. You breathe with that lane for 4 slow counts. Breath in, breath out. Coals dim like eyes that learn to trust lids again. You draw the heel of your glove through the ash and erase the tiny 3-stone row you made. Then remake it beside the first place with more space between each pebble. The change means nothing at all and feels better. You stand and the knees complain, then forgive. The sallet tips back a finger's width to taste cooler air. You bank the cook fire while pitch smoke hangs bitter in the still night air. Oil lamp flame steadies in a shallow dish on the loft beam. A patient wick cupped from draughts by a shard of crock. Flour dust hangs between rafters like a soft, simple weather. The wheel below mumbles through the night. Water on paddles, paddles on axle, a speech the mill gives to itself. Your shoulders find the angle a beam prefers and ease there. Honest wood against tired bone. The miller's ladder rungs hold fresh muddy prints where you climbed. A stale sack spreads under your hips, its twined scratch running in neat lines like the backs of a dozen little fish. Straw whispers when you turn a hand. The smell here is damp oak, river, and old grain, a clean blend that rinses away canvas smoke at the back of the throat. You count the lamp's flickers without hope or fear. The count is only a way to measure breath, down by the sluice. Water thuds a little when the gate lifts and settles. The miller had opened a touch for power, then closed for quiet, and nodded you toward the ladder as if a nod could be a key. He asked no name. He read mud up the boot, a clotted seam on the cloak, and a strap ring print in the glove. He read the way men who count sacks learn to count men. He said there was room, and there was. Your horse stands in the byre lean-to with a nose dipped to straw. You left coin on a beam where the miller would see it after dawn when courtesy can be accounted without embarrassment. The boy you held the rein at the ferry came with you as far as the door and then vanished like steam. You prefer to imagine he found bread at a cook fire and a job that lets him remember himself kindly. Hands clean themselves on flour without trying. The dust works into glove creases and tames the leathers dark with pale proof of ordinary things. You hold them to the lamp and watch the circle mark from the strap ring faint under flour. A private seal now ghosted into something softer. The sight pleases a part of you that will always love neat records. Another part loves the way flour ignores stories. A hopper above your shoulder spills a slow trickle because a habit refused to die when the wheel slowed. Grain rasps along lip and drops in a steady tick. The burrstones answer in a low, sleepy purr between ticks. The loft's timbers answer each other with those old, wooden sighs that know how to live with weight. You match your breathing to that purr. The match holds. From this height, the barn door offers a wedge of dark field and thin sky. Willow tops sketch their careful loops against a paler band where the river runs. Somewhere back on the near bank, a brazier cools to black and a billet's last corner turns to nothing a second time. Somewhere farther still, trumpets sleep in their bags and forget the words they tried to say today. You unroll the small bundle that rides under your cloak where pride used to travel. The knife, the thread you did not need, the billet's ash grit. One spare thong for a scabbard that finally learned modesty. Each piece gets a place on the beam. The lamp kisses their edges and refuses to make them grand. Good. Grand invited trouble every time. Under your palm. The strap ring chills, then the glove warms it back and prints the circle again without asking. That small rhythm assures you the hand is still yours, not the fields, not the camps, not the pages. You close the fingers and the circle vanishes into the fist. Release, and it returns. The lesson is plain enough for sleep to keep. A sack's seam rasps gently under your thumb. You pull it a finger's width to pillow a shoulder, and the seam obliges. The scabbard lies parallel to the beam, hilt tucked, mouth turned away from grit. The old habit that means blades last longer than stories. A breath later, breath again. The body's loyal metronome finds its own work without your advice. In places like this, millers deal in measures men agree upon because bread must sit the same size in many hands. They move grain, keep back toll, mend sluices, set wedges, and write nothing that does not help a hungry day. When roads flood, lofts become guest rooms for men with mud on their hems. When roads clear, stories roll away with carts and change as they go. The wheel ticks softer as the gate sinks another thumb for the night. The miller's wife coughs once in the lower room, then turns in bedding with a small rustle no louder than the mouse's thought. Somewhere a cat invents an argument with a moth and wins. Grain ticks, wood ticks, water hums. Sleep pulls at the thread where your neck meets the shoulder and tugs it kindly. You rehearse the gentler account without much pleasure and with no shame. You carried laces and pitch. You waited at kettles. Your captain's name wore all the right endings and none of the wrong questions. A clerk's dot agreed. A gate opened. A ferry line hummed. A miller nodded. The story spares a boy with a rake and a horse with a steady head. It spares a stranger wearing a provost's eye from deciding your shape among many. It spares you enough to be useful tomorrow. A gust through a chink nudges the flame. The lamp recovers without theatre. Flower powder glows on your forearms where the sleeve rode back. The powder makes the skin into maps that lead nowhere anyone commands. You prefer those maps for now. You can fold them easily and no one asks to see them. You think of the pavise you chose as a wall earlier. Its chalk-dulled face, a door that hid you while you counted. The door still exists, on some bank, leaning where a tired man left it. It will be a bench for a woman, a roof patch for a shed, a sled for a child when snow comes, a table for scales when peas dry. Paint has many retirements. So do men if they choose them. The wheel's speech rounds itself into a lull. The hopper's tick keeps the gentlest beat left in the world. Shoulder finds beam again. Neck eases a click, jaw unhooks from old iron, and the lamp prints a small, steady glow on the nearest rung. You let eyelids meet like old friends who forgave a late arrival. Breath settles, heart calms, weight answers the loft, loft answers back, toward morning. Damp cool slides through the chink and carries the lightest flower taste. It settles on the lip and fades to ordinary air. The river mumbles, content to do what rivers do. You let the world work without you for a while. By dawn, the mill's lamp fails to be needed, the beam keeps your shape. The wheel speaks low, the hopper ticks softer, and the loft holds you until even your hands forget the place where the strap ring pressed. By the loft window, a chalk-dulled Pavis face leans against the outer wall like a quiet door. Its flat look keeps you calm while the mill wakes. A soft grey climbs the rafters and smooths sharp edges. The lamp gives in and sinks to the smallest flame. Flower dust drifts in slow curtains and settles on your sleeve. Your body learns the plank's language and answers with easy weight. The wheel below keeps its patient talk with the river, a steady pulse that remembers no banners and forgives all names. You breathe with it for a while. Air comes clean, leaves warm, returns clean again. Straw holds your shoulder and the beam supports your back. The strap ring's circle fades on your palm until only the idea remains, a remembered coin of pressure in a quiet hand. You look once at the scabbard, it rests where you set it, harmless as a broom. Grain ticks in the hopper with the diligence of rain. That small sound gathers the day and tells it to wait. Outside, willow fronds stir and brush the sill with a soft, brushing word. The river smells of stone and leaf. It offers no verdict. It simply goes. In the byre. Your horse shifts and blows a slow breath that means peace. You close your eyes and the barn stays. The beam does not move. The loft does not argue. The wheel carries on. You're safe. The door below is barred kindly, not against you, but for the night's sake. The miller will climb when the sun shows the right colour on the water, and his wife will say there is porridge if a guest wants it. You can answer then or after, for now. You let your jaw unhook and your shoulders soften. The world can be carried again later. Dust settles on the edge of your glove and makes a pale crescent. That crescent echoes the strap ring's old mark. The echo comforts without fanfare. Across the water, some tent will fold and be tied. Some Pavis will find new duty as a door or table. None of that needs your hands this morning. Your hands can rest. A faint chill rides the dawn. Pleasant and clean, it cools your brow and smooths your breath. You follow the mill's rhythm as it steadies. As the gate closes down to the day's first hum, the lamp shrinks to a coal. The loft darkens to a calm that belongs to wood and grain and water. You let your thoughts ease apart and float like flour in a still room. Sleep takes you gently. It does not ask questions. It sets you down where the river is only a hush, where the strap ring is only a circle in memory, where the pavis is only a calm, flat face against a wall. The wheel turns, dawn opens, warmth gathers. You drift.